So I finally want to talk about the statements Ari Lennox made about Pam on the Martin sitcom. And I'm late on this topic as usual, but I've been out of town for the last week and a half, so I have had no time to record. But I am back, so I'll be getting caught up on content. But let's get into this clip and listen to what Ari had to say.
The thing that pissed me off about Martin was how much he would go on Pam. Like, I know, like, and this is coming from a girl who I love me a good, like, joking ass movie. And it even when the joking movie is like, damn, like, that was fucked up. Like, I'm not like too woke or something is what I'm trying to say. Like, I'm honestly not, I'm problematic. I'm pretty problematic, low key. But my point is that there are some things where I draw the line and it just bothered me. Or like, I don't know, it's like Pam was so fucking beautiful and so fine. And I just feel like growing up as a chocolate girl, like, I don't even know if I was able to understand the greatness of Pam because of the light that I feel like I was being fed. You know what I'm saying? Like of just like always going on Pam, always like that's all I remember. And I didn't like that. But like, so I feel conflicted because while I feel like this show is incredible and I feel like Martin is a legendary show and all of the actors and Tommy and like everybody, like legendary, amazing, like I adore them all. Like, you have no idea. And I adore Martin. Like, I adore him. It just would piss me off. Like the joking on Pam. I just didn't like that, Like, I'll always kind of feel a way about that.
So, of course, Ari's commentary was met with a lot of backlash and gaslighting from the Black community. And y'all know I have definitely had my criticism of Ari in the past, but she is correct here. And I'm seeing a lot of people trying to make it seem like what she said was so far-fetched when it wasn't. And the main feedback I keep hearing and seeing is that Martin roasted everyone on the show, including Gina. And he never mentioned Pam's skin tone. And he always talked about how big Gina's head was, as if that compared to most of the jokes and the roasting he did on Pam. There was a lot of excuse making and defending Martin because most Black people really enjoy and still enjoy The Martin Show, and it's considered to be a classic in the Black community. But anybody who's watched Martin knows that many of the jokes he made about Pam were rooted in colorism and anti-Blackness in general. Always calling her ugly, comparing her to animals, talking about her beady beads, the texture of her hair. And on top of that, the Shanae character, played by Martin, was a caricature of the undesirable ghetto dark-skinned Black woman. And we know that it's very common for Black men especially to dress up like Black women and mock us. And I know somebody's going to say, oh, well, other races of men do it too. Yes, they do. But Black men are notorious for it. They do it way more than non-Black men. And it's always specifically to mock a dark-skinned Black woman. So that is another way that Black men have historically undermined the image of dark-skinned Black women. So only a fool or a liar would say that the Martin Show didn't have colorist undertones. And this was true for much of the Black sitcoms and movies in the 90s. There was definitely more promotion of beautiful dark-skinned women in the 90s because regardless of the jokes that Martin cracked on Pam, she was still very, very attractive. People found her to be very beautiful. I think everybody agrees that Pam was a baddie, as well as some of the other dark-skinned women who were promoted in the 90s. But their beauty was often undermined by the roles that they were given. And I recently saw a video from somebody who was trying to downplay the mainstream colorism in the media during the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And they were basically saying that colorism wasn't a huge problem during those decades because dark-skinned women had more visibility. And I do agree that we definitely had more promotion and more good representation. I'm not going to deny that. But if you have to reach back all the way to the 70s, 80s, and 90s to show an abundance of dark-skinned woman beauty promotion, then that proves that colorism is a problem in 2025. And you can't expect young dark-skinned women and girls who were born in the 90s and the 2000s to identify with dark-skinned women representation that existed decades before they were born. Furthermore, as someone who grew up in the 90s and also consumed a lot of Black media from the 70s and 80s, and even some media from the 40s, 50s, and 60s. And that was due to my mother and my grandmother's movies and music and magazines that they exposed me to. I can tell you that the colorism was still there in those time periods, even as dark-skinned women had a bigger presence in the media. Women like Lena Horne and Dorothy Dandridge, they were prominent in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s because of colorism. Hell, Black men were writing articles in Jet magazine in the 50s about getting with Asian women and non-Black women. And in most of the 1970s sitcoms, the dark-skinned women were more or less the mammy archetype. And I'm not talking about in the traditional sense of the word. I'm talking about the backbone of the family, the woman that mules for her community, the strong Black woman. And I also noticed in these sitcoms that the husbands were often mean or disrespectful to their wives or the other dark-skinned women on the show. We saw this with Sanford and Son. And again, it was framed as comedy, but a lot of it was weird and disrespectful. And many times the husbands showed a level of disdain and disgust with the wives. And y'all can try to gaslight me into believing that that's not what it was on these sitcoms, but I know what I saw. Also, when it comes to the blaxploitation films that featured dark-skinned women, they were often hypersexualized. Many times they were masculinized as well, fighting and pulling out firearms on grown men, fighting the system of white supremacy. And yes, because I know someone's going to say it, there are white movies who also depicted white women this way. Bonnie and Clyde comes to mind. But the difference is the white community and white men specifically made sure to promote their women also being soft, feminine, and they had a lot of promotional variety to offset those depictions. And we all know that their promotion wasn't perfect either. White women also have complaints about the way their men have promoted them as well. So this is not me letting white men off the hook, but if we're being honest, pound for pound, Black men have promoted Black women much worse, or have participated in promoting Black women much worse, and especially dark-skinned Black women. Another colorist Black movie that comes to mind from the 70s is The Wiz. I believe that came out in the 70s, maybe the early 80s. I just remember I grew up watching that movie when I was younger. I loved that movie. But the bad witch in the movie was, of course, a dark-skinned woman, and the good witch was Lena Horne. And so I'm sorry, y'all, there is a lot of colorism in your classic movies, in your classic entertainment. Then in the 80s, there was Harlem Nights, Coming to America, where the dark-skinned sister was the sidekick. They had Vanessa Bell Calloway, as beautiful as she was, hopping on one leg and barking like a dog in that movie. And of course, the woman who became the princess in the movie was a light-skinned woman. Eddie Murphy and Spike Lee were notorious for making colorist films during that time. And in the 90s, again, we had a lot more dark-skin and brown-skin desirable promotion. We had Brandy and Moesha. We had Laura Winslow in Family Matters. We had Naomi Campbell. We had other dark-skinned women in the modeling industry. We had dark-skinned girl groups like Escape, SWV, and Total. So as a millennial, I did have a good amount of dark-skinned women to look up to in the media when I was growing up. And I'm grateful for some of that promotion. But we also have to acknowledge that much of the promotion was stereotypical. And it also encouraged dark-skinned women specifically to be mules for the Black community, or to be Jezebels, or again, we were often promoted as the sidekicks. So we can't just leave that part out. And by the way, feel free to share any colorist movies and sitcoms that you remember in the comments, or music or whatever. And something else that we also have to acknowledge is that many of the unambiguous women that were promoted, specifically in the 90s, were what I coined a while back as quote unquote safe brown. And safe brown would be women like Nia Long, Angela Bassett, Janet Jackson, Sanaa Lathan, and so on. They aren't actually dark-skinned women, but I noticed that a lot of people like to throw them in the dark-skin category, especially when we're talking about representation in the media. And they do that to make it seem like there are more dark-skinned women in the media or more dark-skinned women in these Black movies and sitcoms, especially when they talk about the 90s. And again, if you have to reach or exaggerate like that, then you've lost the argument and you're proving the point that colorism in the media was an issue and still is an issue. And don't even get me started with how dark-skinned women were treated in the industry. Even Tashina Arnold herself talked about being passed up for roles because she was too dark. And this was really bad in the music industry. And over the years, many of the dark-skinned women, quote unquote, it girls, have spoken about their experience with colorism in the industry. Naomi Campbell, Kelly Rowland, Lupita, and the list goes on and on and on. And actually, Tara Hicks from Belly, she just talked about how after her role as Keisha, which everybody loves some Keisha, honey. That was one of my favorite movies too. I loved Belly back in the day. But she just talked about how she really couldn't advance in her career because everyone always wanted her to play Keisha. And they wanted her to be like the hypersexual Jezebel role in movies. And she was not willing to do that all the time. And according to her, it was actually a stunt double that did the S scene in Belly. And she says she didn't even know it was added in there until the movie came out. But yeah, she couldn't really get any work after that movie because they always wanted her to play the same role over and over again. So that's another thing I think, and this could happen to any race of woman, any, complexion of woman, but dark-skinned women are typecast in a very specific way. Mammies, Jezebel, slaves, sidekicks, etc. And this is not to say that you can never be successful if you're dark-skinned. This is not to say that you'll never get any opportunities. Two things can exist at the same time: colorism and being a successful dark-skinned woman. And it's okay to talk about both. We don't have to pick one or the other. The two things exist simultaneously. I mean, you got other groups of women online talking day in and day out about how they're so privileged, but they're also the most hated and the most picked on and the most bullied. I don't see any of y'all telling them, oh, well, you gotta pick one. You either have to be the victim or the victor. Y'all are only saying that shit to dark-skinned women. So it's important, ladies, that you don't fall for those trigger words. Victim, inferiority complex, bitter, insecure. They're doing that to silence you. You can talk about the totality of your experience as a dark-skinned woman. It doesn't take away from your pretty privilege. It doesn't take away from your success as a dark-skinned woman. It doesn't take away from your positive experiences. And it doesn't make you a hater to talk about these things. That's another trigger word. Hater. A lot of y'all are really internalizing all of these buzzwords, all of these colorist buzzwords, and it's making you not want to be honest about the reality. And when you're not honest about the reality of the Black community and how they perpetuate violence and misogyny and colorism against you, then you end up perpetuating it and you end up harming yourself and other dark-skinned women. And that's a problem. And I noticed that the Black community is deeply committed to being dishonest about the rabid colorism, the misogyny in the Black community. And the lies are deeply embedded in Black culture. And it's gotten to the point where dark-skinned women have internalized the lies and they're believing the nonsense. Or if they don't actually believe it, they're deluding themselves to cope with the reality that the community and the culture is what it is. And the way they do that is trying to downplay everything. Oh, it was just a joke and everybody got roasted on Martin. Oh, it doesn't matter because Pam was fine. And if you got pretty privileged, then none of this shit matters. Even though Pam herself was talking about the colorism she experienced in the industry. And oh, if you ever talk about colorism at all, you're a victim and you think nobody's ever going to want you and you think you're going to die alone and never be successful. It's like the hysteria and the exaggeration around the colorism conversation is wild. And y'all will think of every excuse in the book for every colorist movie, every colorist sitcom, every song, music video to make it quote unquote not that deep. And y'all will do that to protect Black men and any form of Black entertainment that was created by Black men and anything created by them that is considered to be a classic, like Martin. Y'all will straight up lie and undermine yourselves to protect them. And it's disgusting. But y'all are quick to call out the white man and his colorism, but can't hold the men who are closest to you accountable when they do it. It's really sickening to watch and listen to, and I definitely think the colorist damage in the Black community is beyond repair. Because looking at the response to this and how y'all are defending Martin, just completely lying, gaslighting, ignoring the obvious, it just shows me how far gone y'all are. I saw where Jess Hilarious and the other Black woman host on The Breakfast Club, I can't remember her name, but I saw where they were downplaying the colorism on Martin, and that is exactly why dark-skinned women continue to get the short end of the stick promotionally, socially, romantically, and everything else, because we excuse colorist behavior to protect Black men who don't like nor want us. Does Martin's wife look anything like Jess Hilarious or the other woman on The Breakfast Club? Exactly. Yet Black women are all over the internet defending his right to disparage Pam on every episode of Martin and dress up like an ugly, ghetto, thirsty, dark-skinned woman to mock Black women. Oh, let me guess, who he's married to doesn't matter. But let Black women come on here and defend a white man that's married to a white woman. We'll be called desperate, thirsty, cringy, insecure, and everything else. But y'all can manstroke, coddle, protect, and defend a Black man who does not deserve it. Y'all are embarrassing. You're embarrassing, you have no dignity, and you participate in harming and undermining your own image, which is not smart or promotionally strategic. So if you are a Black woman who's participating in this behavior and you were unaware of it, now that you know better, I encourage you to stop working against your own interests. You're not helping yourself nor the collective image of dark-skinned women when you decide to protect men like Martin and their dysfunctional, trash, struggle sitcoms and movies. Let it go. That part of the culture is not worth preserving. And ladies, keep in mind that highlighting the flaws in dark-skinned female promotion, it's not playing victim, it's not having an inferiority complex. It's just telling the truth about our representation, and we're allowed to do that as dark-skinned women. We don't have to accept subpar promotion or stereotypical representation and just be thankful or grateful that we're being promoted. Dark-skinned women are allowed to have higher promotional standards. We're allowed to want better because we deserve better. And that's why I'm making this video, to encourage dark-skinned Black women to stop settling for the promotional crumbs, whether they come from the Black community or outside of the Black community. And also stop allowing the community to tell you that promotion and representation does not matter. Because it matters to Black men. You think they weren't complaining about Color Purple and the portrayal of Black men? Oh, they hated Mista in Color Purple. The Manosphere is still making videos about the portrayal of Black men in that movie. White people and every other group care about promotion, representation, which is why businesses and corporations put millions and millions of dollars behind marketing, because they know how it psychologically affects the human brain. And I feel like some Black women have convinced themselves, or have allowed other people to convince them, that representation doesn't matter, or they don't need representation, because you know that your men suck at it and you don't want to admit that your men suck at it. And you don't want to admit that they need to do better. But we don't coddle Black men over here. We don't make excuses for them over here. And we tell the truth about them, and we tell the truth about how they treat Black women, and especially dark-skinned Black women. And it's not just white men who promote us horribly in the media. It is Black men too. They have been complicit in all of this. So yeah, I know I just pissed a lot of people off. I don't care. I said what I said. I meant what I said. I'm not taking it back. And y'all just gonna have to stay mad. But that is all I have on this topic for now. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Also be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And I'll catch up with you in the next video.